Good evening, everyone. This is a PowerPoint presentation as it relates to CSEC English A Paper 1. This is an analysis. In introduction, it is need for us to understand that there are 25 items that we consider to be discrete items that you'll see on your multiple choice exam tests. Though not all the skills will be tested in the exam, we cannot predict what would appear on the exam paper, so I have here with me this slide that will help to assist to prepare you for any eventuality. The second set of questions consists of 35 reading comprehension items. The stimuli are one poem, one literary extract, one expository extract, one argumentative extract, and a visual extract. It is very important that you know that 29% of the final assessment accounts for most of the grade for the understanding profile that you achieve when you do CSEC. Some of the concepts that you'll be acquainted with in the discrete 25 items of discrete considerations are sentence completion, synonyms, antonyms, spelling, equivalent sentences, construction shift, usage 1 and usage 2. Let's look briefly on how we go about analyzing sentence completions. Here on the screen you see an example. The item, if the speaker had been more blank in presenting his views, the public might have accepted them. However, his arrogant attitude blanked them. And the options given: A, timid, defied; B, recalcitrant; C, exonerated; C, diplomatic, alienated; and D, aggressive, impressed. In analyzing these particular items, there are 3 steps I want you to consider. Ask yourself first the questions: who or what is a sentence about? What is said about who or what? And what is why this is said? Step 2, search for key words to better understand the nature of a question. And that is how positive or good or how negative or bad the question appears. And step 3 would lead you to find the right answer that should fit the context perfectly. Let's look at the item now. Again, who or what is the sentence about? The speaker. What is said about the speaker? Well, the speaker has an arrogant attitude. What does arrogant mean? Many of us know that arrogant has attached to it haughtiness or being boastful. Now, why is it that people are saying that this particular speaker is arrogant? It is simply because of the way he makes his presentation. So what kind of answers do we want for the spaces that are there? Based on the first part, if the speaker had been more, we need a good word right there. And in the last part, however, is arrogant attitude. The space for the second area indicates we need a word that would be something negative or bad. Based on the options, timid is definitely timid, and defied as A would definitely be O, because those two are bad. But we need a positive word in first case and then a negative one in the second one. If we're honest with ourselves, we realize that we don't understand the words for B. and C probably don't know what diplomatic means. Then look at D. If we look closer at D, we'll realize that D is also one of the options that seem to be out, because it has bad, and the first idea we must have in the item would have to be a good word. So as it stands now, our only options are between B and C. Let's see. So if the speaker had been more dash in presenting his views, the public might have accepted them. However, his arrogant attitude dash them. The correct answer, having gone through the steps, would definitely be C. Let's move to our next item, analyzing equivalent sentences. When we're analyzing equivalent sentences, it's very important that we analyze the sentence itself. What that means is that we try to understand what the sentence that is giving us an original sentence is saying. Secondly, we need to find the meaning of this sentence. What that means is that we need to read the sentence a second time and explain what it is saying to ourselves. Step 3, we look at the original sentence and the answers given to see if we can find the differences. Let's look at an item here. If Mr. Jones plans to stay over in Brussels, his secretary will reserve a hotel room for him. Is it? Mr. Jones's secretary will reserve a hotel room for him when he stays overnight in Brussels? B, unless Mr. Jones plans to stay overnight in Brussels, his secretary will reserve a hotel room for him? Or C, since Mr. Jones plans to stay overnight in Brussels, his secretary will reserve a hotel room for him? Or D, Mr. Jones's secretary will reserve a hotel room for him should he plan to stay overnight in Brussels? Once we have understood that the sentence is speaking about Mr. Jones and the fact that if Mr. Jones plans to stay overnight, his secretary will reserve a hotel room, then it means that we need to look closer at all those conjunctions that are there. Would it be when, unless, since, or should? Which one seems closer to if? The answer would be should. Let's look at our third item, usage 1. Now, for those of us who are acquainted with CSEC items, we understand usage 1 items to speak to particular areas like tense, spelling, usage, or punctuation and stylistic errors, such as poor. And stylistic errors are errors that are poor word choice. Let's look at the item we have here. With the absence of official rules and regulations in the past, repossessing the land by force was practiced by most landlords whenever they wanted the land for their own use. First of all, we need to look at the item, because we need to look at the item to see if it is unacceptable because of inappropriate grammar, idiom, or vocabulary. So we're looking at those words above the letter information given. So we're looking at absent, we're looking at repossessing, and we're looking at for. The next step is to look carefully to find the connection or the disconnection. Let's take a closer look. Now, if we look at it carefully, we realize that absent focuses on word usage. For also focuses on word usage, and repossessing has something to do with tense. But where is the error? What is the error? We have checked the words, we're looking at the spelling, we're looking at the tense, and we're looking at how the word is used. Is the correct word used everywhere? No. The answer or the error is A. Absent should be absence. Let's change to our fourth item, usage 2. Now, one of the things we need to understand about usage 2 is that the answers are given based on the instructions presented. So the instructions clearly say you put A or shade A in your case if the sentence is too wordy, that is, repetitive or contains redundancies, or you shade B if the sentence contains cliches or misused metaphors, or C if the sentence is incorrect grammatically or faulty in diction, and D if the sentence is acceptable as it stands. Take a look on the note sides. In order to attack this particular concept, you might be asked to identify how wordy or repetitive the information is, bearing in mind that wordy, repetitive, or redundancy has to do with words that are repeated, and these words that are also not necessary. And when we talk about metaphors and similes, it means that we have to be acquainted with those concepts. And if they are mixed metaphors, it means that that too is something we need to remind ourselves of as well. Now, when expressions are used in such a way that they are no longer effective in everyday life, they are often called cliches. Let's look at the answers here before us. If the army retreated back to the hills to prolong the sporadic shooting, in the area, what option best suits the status of the sentence below? Let's look closer. Have you reminded yourselves of the key concepts? Redundancies being repeated ideas, cliches being overused and meaningless statements, mixed metaphor, a metaphor which can be confusing, and these usually use the word of, and diction, how words are used. Then look closely at the options as you look at the sentence given. I'm sure you have your own ideas. Ask yourself the questions. Are there any repeated ideas? If so, then A is a possibility. Is there any cliche that's overused and meaningless statement? or mixed metaphor, a metaphor which can be confusing and uses the word of? No. So clearly it's not B. Look closely at the item again. The army retreated back to the hills to prolong the sporadic shooting in the area. Is there any error in grammar? There is an error. What is it? Notice the colored areas below. The army retreated back to the hills to prolong the sporadic shooting in the area. The correct answer is A. Retreated back is the same as back. Now, to analyze the reading comprehension items, familiarize yourself with the key terms and devices. Listen in your classes. Now, on the day of the exam, try to do the following. Read to get the gist of the extract. Peruse the question carefully to determine its nature. Scan and or skim the extract to find the clue or expected response. Then shade the appropriate answer. One strategy is that you can do one comprehension, then one or more discrete items. Just ensure that you shade correctly and carefully. Here are some key terms and devices that you need to remind yourselves of. Most likely, not true, main purpose, nearest in meaning, most probable, main intention of the writer, effect writer achieves, kinds of writing, closest in meaning, facts or versus opinion, except, best sums up, not true, false, not illustrated, and impression. Some terms will ask for us to use or the clue from the extract as well as your brain. You need to think to respond. Words like imply, suggest, summarize, word indicates, phrase is meant to be. No. The clue is usually in the passage if you see terms like refers to, according to the passage, writer, according to the writer, according to the extract, or author says. Poetry. What are some of the devices you need to concern yourselves with? Repetition, alliteration, simile, onomatopoeia, rhyme, lines, pun, mood, tone, assonance, euphemism. Expository or literary devices. Pun, litones, contrast, rhetorical questions, simile, paradox, irony, personification. Now the visual extracts, you have to focus on the headings, the numbers, the bulletins, fine prints. Very important, subtopics or symbols. Here are some terms explained. Assonance. Assonance is repetition of certain vowel sounds. Think short sounds. Short vowel sounds from the letter U or O can create a melancholy mood. Now look at the example, go slow over the road, or find others of similar nature. Euphemism refers to a polite or indirect expression that replaces word and phrases considered harsh and impolite, or we suggest something unpleasant. For example, kick the bucket is a euphemism that describes the death of a person. Thank you for listening and look forward in detail to another similar extract.